I'm Batman. Well, clearly I'm not Batman, but today I have been given the task of drawing Batman and Catwoman. Love Batman, always have loved Batman as a kid. Wolverine's probably my favourite, but then Batman comes very close after. He's an interesting character to draw because he is very much black. Catwoman is very much black as well, so it's just really dealing with colours of grey and highlights, and the lowlights are just going to be black. It's going to be a nightmare. The reference photo I've picked is quite cool. It's sort of like of a make-believe Batman and Catwoman wedding where they're sort of like intertwined with each other, so it's going to look good.
Speed is of the essence.
Let's get drawn.
Let's go Batman. So we got Batman in the foreground and then Catwoman behind him. I'm focusing initially on Batman's head, not trying to get it final at this stage, just sort of proportions right. The heads actually took quite a lot of time in this because it was just quite difficult to get their actual facial expressions right. Now focusing on Catwoman, her face was actually pretty tricky. Just to get it to be the exact proportions because it just didn't look right at the start, so I had to really strip it back to just the bare lines, and then at a later stage in the video you'll see that I work on her eyes particularly closely, but initially just getting the sketch into place. Now that I've got their faces where I want them to be at, I can now move on to the rest of the drawing. So I really start focusing now on Batman's body. There really wasn't a lot of Catwoman on this drawing, so it's basically her arms around his neck, and then you see a part of her leg on his side, and then a bit of her whip. But other than that, she isn't on this as much as Batman. I was really looking forward to the utility belt because there's lots of detail in that. Ta-da! Final sketch of Batman and Catwoman. So I have rubbed out the pencil, now on to colouring. As always, start off with blocking in the colour. Now, from the start, I think I went too dark with the grey. I didn't have another grey to use, so it was the lightest grey I had, but it was initially going on quite dark. It does lighten up when it dries in, but if I could go back, I might go slightly lighter in the colour for Batman, but it still turned out okay, so I'm happy enough with this. Oh, that's a very bright blue for Batman. All will become clear. Pink? What? Catwoman pink?
It's at this point that you're asking yourself, what has he done? He's went and used blue and pink. So blue and pink, this is a wee trick. Let you do a wee trick. If you're ever wanting to change the colour of your highlights, make sure your base coat reflects that. So from the start, I've been wanting to give Batman sort of like a bluey sort of highlight, and I've been wanting to give Catwoman a pinky sort of highlight, just so that you can really distinguish between the two. It's maybe not realistic to life, but at the same time, I just wanted to add my own little bit of flair on it. So that is why Batman looks completely way bright blue, and Catwoman looks bright pink. But stay tuned because this gets really interesting when you start putting the low light and going really dark with it.
Okay, now finished with the base coat, so really gonna go to town now with the deep low light, so just actually using black. As black as I can get for the darkest colours we've got on the drawing. I actually really enjoy this stage of the drawing because when you're putting in the black, it really shows the dark areas, which gives real emphasis to the drawing. So this part is actually really good fun. When I was staring really closely at the drawing I was copying, I realised that there is a lot of pen on it. There's a lot of fine line pen, so it's not like bold blocky colours and lots of mixing in with the colours blended in. It's actually the artist has used a really fine pen to go into real detail with like hairs and creases and stuff. So the fine liner is going to come in at a later stage, so very much now it is about blocking in the colour. Right, this is where it starts to get interesting. So I have another colour of grey, which is a dark grey. So I've used the lightest grey I've had. You've seen now that it dries in. These type of colours sort of take time to dry in, but when they dry in, they dry sort of a slightly lighter shade.
Batman.
Now this is where I get the fine liner out. So the fine liner, see me doing all these wee small lines and creases and stuff. That is 100% with a fine liner. I'm blocking in the big areas with the black marker, but then when you see me going really fine with a small pen, that's to try to get the emphasis on the muscles and the creases and the wrinkles and the veins. As with all the drawings, the head is so important. So now I'm blocking in the black for the head. I will come on a later stage and put in the dark grey over the blue, which actually turned out really well. If you ever want to see what pen I'm using, obviously you can pause the video or slow it down. You'll see obviously the extreme difference in the Pro markers, which is what I'm using now, or the fine liner, which is what I'm using now. So you can see the different styles of pen. You see off to the left as well there, I've got an iPad. So the iPad's just showing me the reference drawing. So I can zoom in and zoom out and see where I'm at with the drawing as such when I'm copying it. The detail in the face was so immense, but it looked really good. So you can see there the grey over the blue turned out really well with the blue highlights. I always wanted to make sort of Batman the blue character and Catwoman the pink, because then it meant that although they're both dark and black in colour, it meant that their highlights would show up a different colour. I wasn't planning to do a background on this, so it didn't matter this light source which was coming, because obviously if the light source was red, they would both have the same highlight of that light source. But the way it was at the minute, I could just have a bit of artistic license, which turned out really well. Well, chuffed that. Now really focusing on the belt. The utility belt looks cool because you can really add all the fine lines to that, which really makes the drawing pop. That's me basically finished with Batman, so now it's on to Catwoman. I'm leaving the highlights to the very end, so now it's just getting Catwoman's basic colour on. So she's got her base coat, but now I'm just putting the grey over the pink, which as I said, turned out quite well. One of my favourite bits is always seeing how far the drawing comes when you add colour. So they always say that colour brings the drawing to life. It really does, because if you remember back to the final sketch when I'd rubbed out the pencil marks, you can see the difference now when you actually add colour and shade and lights and darks and everything to it. It just makes it look really, really cool. So you can see now with the grey over the Catwoman's pink, it actually stands out quite well. There are a couple of lowlights with the black, but most of her as well, her pink will be very visible. Because there was so little of Catwoman, I knew the eyes would be so important, so I got her skin colour perfect near enough, And then the eyes, I really had to go down to the finest fine liner I had, which I think I've got a 0.05, but I was able to use a 0.1 fine. So I had to really go close on her eyes and get them right, because there isn't much off her, but I wanted the eyes and the facial expression to be perfect. One of the cool things about the drawing I was copying is the artist used a technique called cross-hatching to sort of shade darker areas. It looked really cool, but it was quite hard to replicate at some points, especially around her lips. Finally coming in now with the highlighter, so these are all really bright parts, so this is easy to spot. So you zoom out in your drawing and you make sure to check the really bright areas, which are normally around the shoulders and stuff. So drawing turned out great, well happy with that. And a close-up for the faces.
Okay, so that is a wrap. Really enjoyed this one. It seems to be what I prefer the most is the fine liners. So with this drawing specifically, it was very much using the fine liner. So it was down to 0.1. You can buy sets which have like from 0.1 to 0.8. So I would advise getting that if you want to use the fine liners properly. So I was down to a 0.1 and it was going into the real minuscule detail, which made it turn out class. So I'm well chuffed again with the final result. Let me know what you think. Who do you prefer? Do you prefer Catwoman and Batman? And then what is your favorite superhero? Like, who do you want me to draw next? So I'm open for ideas. There's been a couple of names dropped. Draw Superman, draw Judge Dredd. Do you know Judge Dredd? Judge Dredd is an old one. Who else? We've got Spider-Man's there. I've already drawn Iron Man, so yeah, let me know below what you want to see and I shall get drawing it. Peace! And don't forget to like that video and subscribe. Go on.